List, where we review, discuss, and reimagine popular movie lists objectively. We're your hosts. I'm Jerry.
And I'm Brad. And on this episode, we're going to be reviewing number 73 from AFI's 100 Years, 100 Passions, the 100 Greatest Love Stories of All Time.
All right, and number 73 is The Ghost and Mrs.Muir. This movie was released in 1947, directed by Joseph Mankiewicz, starring Gene Tierney and Rex Harrison.
So, the synopsis for this fantasy drama are as follows. In early 20th century Great Britain, recently widowed Lucy Muir, played by Gene Tierney, moves to the isolated seaside village of Whitecliff with her daughter Anna, despite the objections of her in-laws. She moves into Gull Cottage, reputed to be haunted by the spirit of Daniel Gregg, played by Rex Harrison, a sea captain who died accidentally in the house. On her first night, she is visited by Daniel. He does not appreciate her presence, but is impressed by her headstrong attitude and that she isn't frightened away like other tenants. He reluctantly agrees to allow her to live at Gull Cottage and only appear to her. Lucy's poor investment in a gold mine, her only income source, dries up, and she considers a return to London. Daniel convinces her to stay and write a book about his life at sea. While in London to sell the book, she meets children's author Miles Fairley, played by George Sanders. They soon start a whirlwind courtship amidst the success of her bestseller. Daniel becomes jealous of the relationship and decides to leave, believing he is an impediment to her happiness. While she sleeps, he tries to convince her the book was her idea and he was simply a dream. Soon after that, Lucy learns Miles is married. She lives out her days as a lonely recluse at Whitecliff. Her daughter, now an adult, returns home for a visit and to announce her engagement. During conversation, Anna reveals she too saw Daniel, and Lucy now knows he was real. Many years later, elderly Lucy still pines for Daniel. She passes in her sleep, and Daniel returns to walk Lucy into the ethereal mist.
So, is this the first supernatural movie we've...
It really is, yeah.
I think it is. This is the first supernatural love story we have on the list.
No, on the list. I'm thinking we watched... We have a side list for when we're going to evaluate our own 100, so we're in kind of concurrently we're watching a bunch of other movies that we're going to consider to be part of our 100. I was thinking Somewhere in Time is...
Oh, yeah.
Is that way, but yes, off the list.
Okay, so this is our first supernatural movie. I wasn't sure what this movie was wanting to be, because it kind of started off like a horror movie a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it turned,
vibes.
But every time like Rex Harrison would come on screen, it was like this deep, like really loud, scary music every time he came on. And he really wasn't scary because they didn't make him look like a ghost at all. He was just there.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a bummer because I feel like they had the technology because they had him kind of fizzle out when he left.
Yeah.
So I feel like they could have done something.
Well, back then, you see it, the last kinds of movies that really, really did it, and this was kind of a throwback, was if you ever watch, especially Star Wars A New Hope, they use, in the editing process, they use things called wipes and dissolves, so how the scenes change.
Yes.
So I think that's what they're doing here, is they're using wipes and dissolves. That's kind of how they make him disappear.
Okay.
They use some optical tricks to make him disappear. My biggest issue with this is I don't understand why she falls in love with this guy, because he is
grumpy.
Dick. He's a dick.
A dick. He is so grumpy all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. You're a ghost, okay? Like, you don't have to be here. You know what I mean?
So this is an adaptation on a book, and I wonder just how much of the book lies. I bet you, for the most part, it lies in Daniel's head.
Probably.
There's probably a lot of it that's in his head where he's struggling with the fact that he died young and maybe he never really had a chance to have a relationship, or maybe he did have one or two that kind of...
Did he die young, though?
I mean, he died relatively young. I mean, what is he, maybe in his 40s?
He looked hella old. He did. He looked like he was like in his 60s. And she was like this 23-year-old lady. I'm like, really?
I'll have to look, but I'm pretty sure Rex Harrison was.
I like how she turned hot at the end, back to her like young 19-year-old self, and he's like still old.
That's probably where George Lucas got the idea to replace poor Sebastian Shaw out of the Force Ghost thing at the end of Return of the Jedi with Hayden Christensen.
Who wants to see an old ghost?
I guess.
Yeah.
Well, she was young at heart. She went back to the point where they had their relationship. So, I mean, you don't see it on screen, but, he's dictating his life story to her, which she's typing out, and that's kind of the book. So they're spending a lot of nights and evenings together where she is putting this book together. And it's an indeterminate amount of time. We don't know exactly how long this takes her. So you can suspend your disbelief a little bit that they spent a lot of time together, but everything they show us on screen is he's not anything. He's just curmudgeonly.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't show her.
He's an old sea captain.
He doesn't show her any affection. And I was sitting there. I'm like, man, if this dude is like what she wants, what kind of piece of shit was her husband?
Right. Who was a piece of shit, right? We kind of got that he wasn't that great with her,
We kind of got the impression that she wasn't in love with him.
Yeah, that's true.
It was some kind of marriage of convenience.
Right. And then she's like, she goes after this one guy, Miles, right?
Yeah.
And like he turns out to be a dirtbag.
Yeah, he's married.
Yeah, and then she's like, okay, that's it. I'm done.
Yeah. Well, she's
never going to be a man like...
Well, she had her husband.
The sea captain.
And then there was Daniel, who's it's kind of that thing where it's like he's probably alluring because she can't have him and he's stuck in time. So she's never going to see the worst parts of him because she can't be with him. So he's kind of idealized. And then she kind of projects that a little bit, I think, onto Miles. And, he's clearly, like, his wife, like, lets her know, like...
This has happened before.
This isn't the first time this has happened.
The music,
yeah.
Like, okay.
We got it.
Yeah.
Let's dial it back. Let's dial it back a little bit.
That movie was very strange. It was very weird. Why didn't her, like, living in housekeeper person... Why didn't she have a trip? Like, why are you in your room all the time? Who are you talking to?
I think she did a little bit.
Did she?
I think so.
She did not like Miles, though.
No, right up from jump.
She was like,
Ladies, listen to your girlfriends.
Yes, they do know. But yeah, it was Natalie Wood's in this movie.
Yeah, she plays Anna as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So she's probably, what would you say, maybe 7 or 8 years old?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, she's really young. So when it said Natalie Wood, I'm like, what is she playing? Because I'm like, I wasn't thinking how far back in time this was. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then you see her, I'm like, oh, of course she's playing the kid. She's a little girl.
Yeah, and this movie, the time of the movie is actually like the 1800s.
No, it's like early 20th century. So
okay,
it's like probably the aughts. Like
okay.
19 aughts.
Okay.
So, it's the production value is pretty good. Mm-hmm. But I don't understand the relationship, and I mean the movie suffers from one of the worst things that I think a movie can suffer for. It's boring.
It's so boring. It's
really,
so dry.
It's really dry, and it's really like, if you're gonna try to sell me on a love story, I gotta believe these people are in love. I gotta believe at the very least there's a struggle.
Yes.
There's nothing there. Like, I don't understand where she's coming from. I don't understand where he's coming from outside of the fact that she's really beautiful. Okay. It's like...
Yeah.
That...
There was one profound thing that he said that really kind of struck me was when she is talking to him about Miles and, like, struggles and stuff, and he says, the ocean's always going to come in and there's always going to be breakers. And kind of telling her, like, there's always going to be tough times you're going to have to live through.
Right.
And so that was I was like, okay, that was kind of...
And I wonder if it was kind of foreshadowing too, like,
Mm-hmm.
like the waves are gonna hit you with the sky faster than you think they're gonna happen.
Yeah.
And they really do. I mean, it's almost maybe a few days after Daniel kind of
decides to
leave, and he tries to basically like plant in her head, this book was your idea and you were just dreaming about me, I wasn't really here, and then he leaves.
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of starts to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, this whole thing, like, she finds out that Miles is going to be in London, and she wants to surprise him with a visit, and she shows up, and it's at his house.
With his wife there.
His wife and his kids, and it's like, don't.
Yeah. It's shitty.
Yeah.
It's kind of a morbid kind of story.
It's really sad.
It's very sad.
It really is sad.
This woman lived her whole life by herself because she fell in love with a ghost. And it's just like, I guess any man that would come, she would probably compare to him, and I guess nobody was.
And she's kind of isolated, so
very isolated.
I'm guessing, like, you know, there wasn't a lot of Tinder hits for her.
No.
Back there in Whitecliff, so
they probably thought, oh, that's that old crazy lady that lives in the house,
the
up
haunted
there.
house, yeah.
Yeah. So, boy, her housekeeper though, she was super loyal.
Yeah.
Like stayed with her to the end, you know.
Yeah, she left with her instead of staying with the family. Live with her at Whitecliff, like, basically, like, she was still there when she died.
You just can't find help like that anymore.
Yeah. You really can't. Who has housekeepers?
Yeah, like, whatever.
Live-in housekeeper.
Yeah. Her in-laws were total assholes.
Well, her sister-in-law was. Her mother-in-law was just like a basket case. I didn't understand why they cared.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the point? Like, what do you need her to stay for? Like, there was no reason given as to why she had to stay and live with them.
Yeah, I know.
Was it the gold mine?
I think it might have been the gold mine.
But even after the gold mine kind of dried up, they
still came back and asked her to stay.
It was weird, but
it was weird.
Anyway, I gave this one a 55. Jerry gave it a 40. The list score is 47.5. So probably not going to make the overall list. It was just really. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it. It just wasn't very entertaining.
Yeah. I think we rented this one as well.
We did.
If you've seen this movie, you feel like we're way off base, you know, please leave your comments. Let us know what you thought. Also, if you haven't seen it, and maybe, I mean, we kind of didn't give it a great review, but if you want to watch it, watch it.
Yeah.
You know, prove us wrong. Anyway, what else? Oh, our Gmail account is, if you want to email us, ratingthelist@gmail.com.
Leave a comment.
Leave a comment. They always do that. They always point down or sideways. All right, well, we're Rating the List, and I'm Jerry.
I'm Brad.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.